This is CG Ruthless Sports. I will be brutally honest. Ain't nothing but being brutally honest. Coming at you with another video. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome back 49ers Rush Podcast. The legend, the myth, John Chapman is back in the building. How's it going, bro?
Man, I'm doing well. This is, we're into the craziest week. I titled my show yesterday, most important week of the offseason for the 49ers. This is it. And it starts earlier than most teams because of the Brock Purdy news, the surgery, all that stuff. But, man, we're in the thick of it, buddy. Glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, it's an interesting situation. Brock Purdy's surgery is going to be on Friday. A lot of questions at the quarterback position, but here's the one position that everybody's not even talking about. We're talking about the offensive line, right? Isn't that like one of those positions that we have to address going into free agency, or you think the draft?
Yeah, I think both is probably the answer. Now, the weird thing about the offensive line's a little bit different than the D line. You got a lot of bodies already. There are bodies present enough to fill the room. The problem, maybe it's not a problem. The issue is, are there starter caliber players, or are they just bodies? Are they just backups? Last year, nobody would have guessed that you would be moving forward with Banks, Brindle, and Burford. You nailed Burford, by the way. But all three of those combined, I don't think anybody predicted that. And they started almost the entire season and locked it down. So the expectations don't always meet what we think is going to happen. And the 49ers know these guys better than anybody. And so we'll probably dive into a few of those. But Colton McKivitz, he's a guy that I got highlighted. Could be a starter day one at right tackle. Probably not the sexiest move or the fan happiest or enthusiastic move, but part of me says I'd be okay with it.
I mean, McKivitz kind of showed some signs when he got a chance to play. He wasn't too bad. Like, as far as him, he would be a bargain. I think he's a restricted free agent. Like, we were talking about, like, the question marks during this offseason. And the one specific spot I did say was people thought it was crazy last year. My bold takes is not always going to be
crazy all the time, CG. I'm just going to be honest, but in the best possible way, my friend.
No, the best possible way was I thought everybody was just thinking I was just too homerish because I let Spencer on my show, but I thought there was something in this kid that would just make me believe that he would be a starter. And some people would say, nah, he would be a tackle. You're joking. I'm like, dude, he played guard first 2 years in college. So what makes you think he can do? He can do anything, dude. And he succeeded my expectation. But Aaron Banks, he sat 1 year. I had no question on this guy because I wasn't sure. Because, if you haven't played snaps or anything like that, I can't throw you under the bus yet.
I think a lot of it, if we just look at what he brought, and, there's not a lot of UTSA Texas Roadrunners going from – their conference to start in the NFL, their rookie week one. I think him and Marcus Davenport are about it. But there were a lot of signs that he just fit. And then the injury to Brunskill, and that's what it took. And he never really relinquished. I did kind of think it was interesting how they handled the rotation. I didn't mind it all year at right guard, but I don't see that moving forward, especially Brunskill as a free agent. And even if they do bring him back, I doubt that they kind of deploy that same tactic as rotating series and things like that.
It just wouldn't be right. Maybe for Brunskill, if he were to come back, I would probably prefer to put him at tackle too. He's another candidate because his versatility. It's like he can play the guard. I don't know about the center, man. It's like I like Danny on everywhere except center. Like he does a really good job, but the center spot, I don't know, man.
Yeah, it's a mess. And probably, if you're looking at just the pecking order of priority positions on the offensive line, it goes left tackle, right tackle, center. And then both guard spots, whatever. They're important, but Kyle Shanahan has always spent pretty well. He's had Alex Mack for about a decade of his offensive coordinator, and then whenever he brought him here, because Mack was with them, drafted him in Cleveland, brought him with them to Atlanta, then brought him here as well. Center's a big time deal, and they kind of went cheap last year, and it was okay. It was okay. Brindle played well, especially in pass pro. From a run blocking standpoint, subpar would be the best way to put it from Brindle and what he did. So do they bring him back? He's over 30. We'll see there. We go with one of the young bucks like Jason Poe, Nick Sikel. You said Daniel Brunskill. There's a lot of options there.
Oh, yeah, there's definitely a lot of options. I mean, Brendo, I don't know. Like you said, his pass blocking looks good if you are including the penalties. I mean,
yeah, and fumbles. But he cleaned that up the last third of the season. But early on, a lot of turnovers came at Jake Brindle's expense, probably 3 of them. And the penalties, those were rough as well.
Legal man downfield. I don't know how much he had that, but he had the most illegal man downfield in those type of plays. But like you said, his pass blocking wasn't as bad. It was adequate in certain aspects. His run blocking, when it came to the run blocking, I think our running game took a step down a little bit because of the fact our position. Like you had Brendo. McGlinchey's usually a good run blocker, but he might have priced himself out. And Mike McGlinchey, man, it's kind of like, a great run blocker at best, but pass blocking, what is it with this guy?
Just consistency. And I will say that he did put together probably a 7-week stretch of his best and most consistent film we've seen in any part of his career. The bad thing is this: he ended it as poor as we have seen in previous years. So McGlinchey was good. He's going to get probably the largest tackle payday of anybody in free agency. And rightfully so. I think he deserves it. And I think he deserves a clean start. The 49ers fan base, I love it. We're called the faithful, but we pay attention to tackle play. There are lots of franchises out there and fan bases out there that don't have all the shows that we have and the clips and all that stuff. It would be better for him to go to a place maybe a little bit less coverage that appreciates who he is, because he's a hell of a dude. He's a great human. He's consistent. He's played through injuries, and he deserves to be paid and deserves to kind of be, I don't know the right word, heralded, but I think it'd be best for everybody just kind of part ways. Very similar to how I feel about Jimmy G. He's a good quarterback, but it's hard coming here whenever you've had Steve Young, you've had Joe Montana, you've had those guys. That's a rough spot. And so I think, those are 2 guys, Jimmy G and Mike McGlinchey. I just think it'd be best for everybody involved to go elsewhere and start something new.
Yeah, absolutely. Jimmy G, despite what people think of him, I mean, the durability was the only question mark out of this guy. Like, if he would have stayed healthy, he was a proven winner. I mean, it's hard to find quarterbacks of his caliber, even though he's not like an Aaron Rodgers, even though he's not in those other levels of those other quarterbacks. But he does enough to win games. But in the previous years under Shanahan, it's always been that question mark. Without Jimmy G, Shanahan has a below 500 record. This season, Brock Purdy just showed that under this system, they can win games without Jimmy G.
Yeah, and I think, if you look at those stats of, without Kittle, what's their record? Without Jimmy, what's their record? The most blatant one on that list is when Nick Bosa's out. When Nick Bosa's out, it's even more disparaging. And that's just kind of the difference that Nick Bosa is best defensive player in the league, one defensive player of the year. So, yeah, there's a lot of that. And the injuries have been immense since Shanahan and Lynch showed up. And really, the 2 years before Lynch got here and Shanahan got here, we were still one of the worst teams in the league as far as injuries go. So this isn't just this front office issue, but it's a major issue.
Yeah, it's got to do with the train staff and all the other stuff, but then most of all, it's the players. What kind of type of training they're getting, because it's increasing the injuries.
Yeah.
Like, if you take away the 2019 season, Shanahan he's had the most injuries at quarterback, and it hasn't changed the trend or nothing. Like, why is it so hard to prioritize an offensive line who can maybe pass block better, or get another tight end who can complement Kittle but is a good blocker?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because if you look at Tyler Kroft, he was above average pass blocker all season. Like, it's not like I understand that you play that highlight where, Brock Purdy gets hurt in the NFC Championship and Tyler Kroft misses the block on Hassan Ridgeway. Well, you just go to the Super Bowl and you see Andy Reid deploying the same thing, a backup tight end against Hassan Reddick. I think they did it 4 times. Reddick got 0 pressures. And so it was a play. It was a play. And I hate whenever one play kind of defines so much of what Tyler Kroft did. I thought Tyler Kroft had a good year. And he beat out Charlie Warner and Ross Dwelly to get there. So it's not like he was terrible all year, because that's just not the reality of the situation. It was one play. And, just to add more nuance to that, the play that Brock Purdy got injured, if Brock Purdy would throw the ball when he was supposed to, no injury would have happened. Who knows what happened? But Brandon Ayuk was wide open. He pats the ball, then he goes to throw it. If he would have thrown it instead of patting the ball, it's a whole different conversation. But
it's a whole different situation, because we know what happens if we just get a quarterback who can throw the ball. This offense moves better. Yeah. But the unfortunate injury, like you said, it's not always going to be perfect with all these plays. And I guess, like you said, Tyler Kroft had a poor execution play, and it happens every now and then. But it's like, if you take away that, what was the issue with the way they handle Trey Lance, man? They treated him like a running back out there at times.
I didn't like that. I don't mind running your quarterback. Like, again, like you look across the NFL, and Trey Lance is a big boy, and you see what's happening with Jalen Hurd. You see what's happening with Josh Allen. You see what's happening with Daniel Jones. You see what's happening with Justin Herbert. You can go on and on and on. People are running their quarterbacks. The problem is Trey Lance has to learn how to mitigate some of those tough hits. Now, the play that he got hurt on wasn't really a tough hit. It's just a guy rolled up on his leg, and he got hit going the opposite way. Now, I will say this. If you look at before that play, there were several big hits that game where he could have been hurt in other ways. So you've got to – I don't mind the running. I don't mind the amount of runs. I don't mind the run play calls as much as everybody else blew out of proportion. That's not the issue. The issue is taking fewer hits, getting down, sliding, glancing off defenders to where you're not hitting them head up, things like that. And until the quarterback can protect himself, it's the coach's job to help that. You're either coaching it or you're letting it happen. And I think in this case, Kyle Shanahan's kind of exacerbated the amount of contact that Trey Lance has been brought on early in his career instead of helping him out.
I think you need to develop more as a passer, only run it if it's necessary. But it's like they kind of take more advantage of what he is. They think of him as a runner instead of a passer. But the lucky part about it was having Jimmy Garoppolo as the insurance policy. Like, if we didn't have Jimmy Garoppolo, I think the season would have been a different situation, because what if we just threw in Brock Purdy earlier than expected? I don't think Brock Purdy would have been as successful if it wasn't for him learning for a little while. Because sometimes these rookie quarterbacks, you throw them in the fire, they struggle early on. But Brock Purdy, he took like 13 weeks of learning, and it benefited him.
And I'd argue as well, CMC. Like, the fact that he had CMC, if he comes in week 2 when Trey got injured, that was some rough sledding. As you look at what Jimmy Garoppolo came out that week and the following week. Remember that Denver game?
Oh man,
that's the worst quarterbacked game perhaps I have ever seen in my entire life for both sides.
If you take away the safety, we win that game. But
if you take away the safety, it's a pick 6. Like that's the thing. You remember, like, I was sitting next to Wayne Breezy. We went to that game together, and I just remember just saying, like, these two quarterbacks are the worst in the NFL this game. Like, it was so bad. Like, Russell Wilson was god awful. They were booing him. Jimmy Garoppolo was worse. And it was just like, oh man, this season, good God. But thankfully, we turned it around. You win back-to-back games. But, back to your question, yeah, if Brock Purdy goes into that, you miss the Brock Purdy's amazing. The whole how many games in a row can he win? How many 2 touchdown performances can he have in a row? And it was almost nonstop, man. He just crushed it. Absolutely crushed it.
Yeah, but I think if they would have threw the kid a little early than expected, it would have been a little different results, because sometimes you throw in these rookie quarterbacks, they're not always ready. So you got to give it some time. And I think 13 weeks into him learning under that defense that he practiced against, I think it helped him a lot better. And getting the weapons, like you said, Christian McCaffrey, it made a difference. But I think the fact that some people said, oh, if Brock Purdy would have played earlier, you guys would have been a different team. Like, we don't know, because we've seen guys that come into the league as rookie quarterbacks and struggle early on.
Yeah, no, I like the timeline. You never plan injuries and you never want injuries. But the fact that he went from third string quarterback to second and getting a little bit more involved in the game plan. And also, I think what's important is the entire offense went back to the Jimmy G kind of quick firing, quick release, check down. That suited Brock Purdy as well. So the rest of the team had a easier transition. Instead of going from Trey to Purdy, you went from Trey to Jimmy to Purdy. It just made it more seamless for everybody.
Yeah, the skill set was very similar. I mean, you look at the difference. I mean, now we're going into the offseason, maybe potentially bringing in a veteran quarterback. So if we're looking at a veteran quarterback or maybe a rookie in the draft that we can get in the later rounds, maybe another Brock Purdy, which player comes to mind that you like in free agency that you want the Niners to sign?
So free agency, it's rough, man. I want 4 quarterbacks, especially because we don't know what's going to happen with Brock, whatever else. You assume he might open up on the pup or whatever. I don't know. We don't know. Surgery's Friday. We'll know a little bit more then. But I think it's smart to do both. I really, really do. I think you draft one. I think you bring in a free agent, 4 quarterbacks in camp, not a big deal. Now, the question with free agency is this. Not only do you have to find a quarterback that you can afford, right? Are you wanting to spend $6 to $7 million on a second/third string quarterback? I'm not quite so sure the 49ers want to do that. But also, you've got to have a quarterback that wants to come be the third string quarterback. Like, they understand that. Like, the NFL is devoid of quarterbacks right now. There's 15 teams that just don't know who their quarterback is going to be. And so if you're looking at a guy like Jacoby Brissett, Teddy Bridgewater, whatever, I'm just throwing names out there. Those are quarterbacks that legitimately could start week 1 for about 4 to 5 teams. So how do you get them to say, hey, I know you want to start. Why don't you come be our second/third string quarterback instead? I don't know football players that would sign off on that. Oh, and by the way, we want you to take a team-friendly deal because we're competing for a championship, and you might get a ring here, but we want you to be the number 2 guy, and when Brock comes back, you'll be the number 3 guy. I think you're going to have very slim pickings at that quarterback spot. I really, really do.
It really depends on the quarterback. It really depends on what quarterback it is, because any other quarterback at this point, you can look for a guy like maybe a Mason Rudolph, who's probably not going to expect much of a role. He'll probably be the one that might take the role because he knows he wants to keep a job. You get other guys. I don't know about Baker Mayfield. Mayfield thinks he's worth to be a starter again, so I don't think he'll want to go there.
Yeah, I keep seeing those reports about Baker. I know you're an OU guy, and so I'm going to be careful. I'm a Longhorn. I'll behave. It's your show.
It's all
I
good,
just
man.
don't see the fit of Baker here.
Yeah.
Everywhere he has gone, teammates have literally gone against him. Nick Bosa hates his guts. I just do not understand that. I don't know. I don't see. I cannot connect those dots.
And he doesn't want to be a backup. He wants to be a starter. So it doesn't make any sense to bring him.
He forced his way out of Carolina because of the same damn reason. So you're going to bring him in here and tell this guy, hey, you're going to be second to third string quarterback? I don't see it, man.
No, like Mayfield's going to be like, nah, I want to be a starter. Sorry, not interested.
Yeah.
But I think somebody that Myles Garrett hit in the head, maybe he might be interested.
Hey, yeah, we'll see there. And it's interesting because the Steelers camp seems to be pretty high on keeping him, which is crazy to me. But we'll see. We'll see. We'll see how it pans out. It's going to be weird to get like an attractive, like again, people are like, who do you want at quarterback? Well, I want Marcus Mariota. I want Gardner Minshew. Those are the guys I want. I want Jacoby Brissett. That's what I want. But just because it's what I want, that's a whole different thing. And just because the 49ers want it, that doesn't mean it's going to happen. Because again, you want to come here and be the third quarterback? Why? Unless you just want a ring. It's hard to find for me. It's hard to find a pairing. I think and that's why you go back to guys like Nate Sudfeld. Not sexy, but 49ers. It makes sense. Knows the system. Price point matches. He's fine being the second, third guy. It makes sense to me. That makes sense to me. So you get a guy like Nate Sudfeld, and then you draft somebody late. Jake Haener out of Fresno State. That's the one everybody talks about. Hendon Hooker is the guy I love, but he's probably going to the second round. So kind of figuring out what it is you want to do, it's difficult. And then with Hendon Hooker, again, you got the injury issues. And so that kind of limits that one. So you dwindle all these things down, and you can get into the Stetson Bennett. You can get into, the TCU kid, all those things. You got to find somebody that's willing to come in and learn. The experience is a plus with guys like Stetson Bennett and, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting the TCU kid's name. What's wrong with me?
Max Duggan.
Thank you. I coached with his dad. I apologize to the family.
So he's got the relations of Hacksaw Jim Duggan. I'm just playing.
He does, man. He looks the part, man. His dad looks just like him too. Fiery, redheaded dude. Just all business all the time. He couldn't really pass a lot of jokes around him, but good dude, great dude. But so we'll see where those guys go. Do you want to spend a 5th round or a 6th round pick on those type of guys? I think it makes sense. I want 4 quarterbacks in that room.
I mean, for the draft class, there is this one quarterback that you're not even bringing up, but I think he would be a great fit in this offense if it comes down to the injuries. I think Clayton Tune is a guy from Houston. I'm hearing a lot of buzz about this kid. He's got a solid arm talent. Plays in a good offense for Houston, which I've seen quarterbacks in previous years who played in Houston actually produce pretty solidly. So it would be a nice player to check out. But Jake Haener, I've seen this kid play at Fresno State. I've checked out his film and a lot of stuff. I see this guy in person. He's an undersized quarterback, kind of like a Brock Purdy, but he kind of has the talent-wise, but you got to give him the talent around him to succeed, because if you give him lesser talent, he doesn't look as good as everybody else.
Yeah, and I'll say this about Tune. I do like him. I really, really do. And I've got a 6th round grades probably where he's going to go 5th, 6th round. And he's got all the experience in the world, over 5,000 passing attempts. He's been at Houston for 5 years because he got that COVID exemption. So, yeah, experience, size, I like him. There's my favorite thing about this quarterback draft class. I was trying to explain this to my buddies in my fantasy league. We do this dynasty fantasy, whatever, is there's a lot of guys that you could clearly see a path to play in time. That these guys could, now they might not be top 3, top 4 type players at the quarterback position. There's not a lot of super, super high upside outside of Anthony Richardson, but that's just raw. These guys, you can get guys in the 4th, 5th round, 6th round, like Clayton Tune, that I think will be a really, really good backup for a long time. So the needs kind of meet where the 49ers want. And so I think they'll be able to get that this year.
Yeah, Clayton Tune would be somebody I would keep my eye on. But if you look at the draft class, it's not as like everybody's saying. But I think, like you said, Anthony Richardson is he just had a spectacular performance in the combine. I think Seattle's going to be taking this guy. I think Seattle will get him.
I really hope they don't. Somebody asked me, okay, Seattle's got these 2 picks, top 20. What do you not want them to do? And I said, I don't want them to draft Anthony Richardson.
I think that's the worst case. Yeah, I think that's the worst case scenario because
for 49ers. Right?
Yeah, because they signed Geno for a short term, which is good for the bridge quarterback. But getting Richardson and him learn for a year or two, it's going to be scary at some point. But You look at this draft class, these edge rushers, all the other talent, like this defense. There's some talented defense, but when I look at the need that everybody's forgetting about, like the Niners definitely need a safety. There's just, I don't see quite a big name at safety that catches my attention for quite some time. I mean, in the previous years, I like some of the safety class, but I had to dig deeper, and I don't really see one guy that just catches my attention as much, you know?
The problem is the 49ers first pick is like 99. So
It's
if
hard.
there's a game changer or somebody that's just like, wow, they're going in the first 90 picks. And so there's a reason why these guys go 99th and not top 20. And it's not, we're not throwing shade at them. The 49ers met with Jamie Robinson out of Florida State. He completely fits the 49ers draft thresholds at certain positions. And what I mean by that is they kind of set like a bare minimum of, height, weight, arm length, speed, things like that for different positions. And for defensive backs, it's very, very simple. They want you close to 6 foot, not too much over. And they want you close to 200 pounds, not too much over. They like the 6 foot, 200-pound defensive back, whether it's outside corner safety, it's just almost across the line. Almost all these guys are close to it. Jamie Robinson, 5'11", 203. Absolute fits it perfectly. He's a tremendous tackler, which you have to do in the 49ers defense with what they kind of, do. My play style comp for him was Quandre Diggs. A guy, one of the best players for the Seattle Seahawks, their safety. Again, another Texas guy. But Jamie Robinson, they met with him. If he falls, I have him going second to third round, but safeties fall. Safeties fall consistently in the draft because it's not a premium position anymore. I think that's somebody you could look at that I would be very, very happy to get.
Well, I've heard his name pop up because he's a good tackler and all the other stuff, but there's this one prospect. I don't know why we met with him, but I don't know if he can play all the other spots. But I heard J.L. Skinners is a guy that we met up with, but he seems more like a strong safety.
Yeah, he's huge, man. And again, he's 6'4", 200. So when I was doing my pre-combine write-ups, I was like, yeah, I don't think this is somebody the Niners are going to want to talk to. But then they had a meeting with him. And I was like, all right, okay, let's see what happens here. And so he could do a lot of great stuff, but man, he is long and he is a high cut safety. There's no doubt about it. And his long speed's not great, but the 49ers don't put a premium on speed on the back end. A lot of people want that 4-3 safety that can kind of like erase. Niners don't do that. Tayshaun Gibson did that role last year, and he is not a 4-3 guy. He wasn't a 4-4 guy. It's just they want somebody that knows the scheme. They want to stick in quarters and halves as much as possible instead of that cover one where he has sideline to sideline. It's just not really what the Niners do anymore. They used to, but not anymore.
Yeah, because when they invested in a guy like Tavarius Moore in the third round, they thought it would work out, but just speed-wise, he just didn't seem to.
My thing is, like, that was back. I was very upset with the Tarvarius Moore pick, not because they drafted him out of Southern Miss, 4'3", 240. He had the speed, had the height, all those things. It's that they moved him to corner. They moved him to corner for 2 years and wasted that development. Very similar to what they did to Solomon Thomas, moved him outside, wasted his development. And so I was having an issue at that time, which I'm usually really, really positive, but probably my biggest critique of the Kyle Shanahan era is just a misappropriation of draft capital and changing positions. I don't like those things. And Tarvarius Moore never panned out, probably wouldn't have, but I was just so upset. Like, we've seen this guy play safety, let him play safety, and then y'all just move him to a position he hasn't played, and it never worked out. It bothered me.
It's kind of like, why are you doing that? Is it just something they see in this guy? And I'm like, dude, why even put a guy at a different position he's not comfortable with? Like, before the regime, the Niners put Jimmy Ward in different spots he didn't want to play. Like, they put him at nickel in the beginning, and it just wasn't his thing.
And so I think the reason to answer that question, John Lynch even alluded to it. Like, we know he can play safety, but we value corner a little bit more. So we want to see if we can get that extra value out. Very similar to Solomon Thomas. Never played outside. At Stanford, they were a 3-4 team, so he was that 3-4 defensive tackle. We put him at edge, much higher premium position, edge than tackle. He failed there, moved him inside, and by that time, it was like, oh, he's already classified a bust. I don't like that. I understand the thinking. I just don't understand the practical approach with how they've done it. It just hasn't panned out very well.
It just hasn't. Like in some ways, they just realize late. It's like they just don't get to that point to where you should put them where they're excelling at, and it's too late to develop it. But now you look at going into like, there's a lot of good talent in the draft class with these edge rushers. Like I think you can get any of them in the third and late rounds. That can be a guy that could be in the rotation or compete with Drake Jackson for that job. I think there's one guy that caught my attention in the draft that might just be somebody to take a flyer on, but I think he should be in the spot. I don't know if he'll move up draft spots right now, but the kid from Tennessee, Byron Young, has that quick stuff, and he can be an effective pass rusher, I think, at the next level. What do you think of him?
I freaking, he ran a 4.4340. Like the dude just exploded. And so he's probably one of the draft guys that I have seen the largest range on. I've seen him going, top 50 picks early second round. I've seen him going in the fourth round. So my assumption is probably going to go early third, kind of that, he's probably going to go top 75 picks. But what does he do well? It's D Ford, man. Like that's who this guy is. It's excellent.
I was thinking the same.
And bend. And so the Niners have missed that since D Ford. And so like, he's not your every down. How do I say this? He's not your every down player where he's just going to be out there all the time like Sensa and Ebicom. That's not what it is. He's a good run defender, but he's not great. He is a speed to bend pass rush specialist. That's where his bread and butter will be. So, I mean, he fits what we want. It's just, will he be there?
Yeah, that would be the question. Will he be there? And there's some good defensive line that can play in those versatility roles. I mean, you got a lot of good this draft class. You look at some pretty deep defensive line. Like there's just some guys you can count on the rotation or be your starters. I mean, which defensive tackle do you like so far in the draft that just caught your attention with one of those?
Oh, you're talking defensive tackles?
Yeah.
So if we're going inside, man, I got to do this. I have no choice here, CG. I got to talk about my Texas boys. We got two of them, and the 49ers are meeting with both of them. And it's funny because you have these two Texas boys. They both fit kind of what the Niners want to do. You have Keandre Coburn, 6'2", 230, kind of a Hassan Ridgeway, another Texas guy, right? Or if you want your small, athletic slasher, you got Moro Ojomo, 6'3", 292. Who tested way, but he had a great combine.
He's solid.
He might have pushed himself up a little bit. So Coburn's the body run stuffer. Ojamo's the slasher, athletic penetrator power guy. That's smaller but way stronger. Those are two guys that just, man, you're talking about like right where the 49ers draft. Another guy, Jaquelin Roy out of LSU. I think he fits as well. 6'3", 305. Niners just need bodies.
Yeah,
because if you look at the defensive tackle positions, might not make people happy, but just listen for a second, okay? Armstead's coming back, solid. I understand Kinlaw definitely didn't end the season the way he wanted to, but he's coming back. He's under contract. There's no sense in trading or cutting him. You get no money back. It costs you nothing to keep him. Also, you have Kalia Davis, who you drafted last year, the ACL team. He's back. He redshirted. That's 3, and you got Maurice Hurst still. So, sorry, not Maurice Hurst. Kevin Givens. I always get those two mixed up.
Yeah, Kevin Givens is restricted, so we can bring him back. So
yeah, restricted means they're coming back. Givens coming back. So you've got 4 defensive tackles. You only got 2 edge guys. So I think you need a defensive tackle or 2, but you got to get 3 to 4 more edge guys. Got to.
Absolutely. Since you're throwing names from Texas, man, I got to throw one out there that you probably are very familiar with, but he plays on the other side of the other team.
That's okay. That's all right.
Jalen Redmond, man, the guy tested a good 40 time, and he was very productive in Oklahoma. He's a guy that we need to get to, but I like the Ojama dude, the one that you were talking in Texas. I like this film so far. The big body guy that you were talking about, Coburn, whatever, that dude is just a massive dude that could stop the run. But if
he's one of the best horizontal line players at Texas. I mean, I've seen every play he's ever played since high school. The dude he's got a great motor for a big body. He's just not a penetrator. He's the dude that's just running back and forth through gaps, stopping the run. Like, that's just what he does. Like, it's just hard to get around him, right? So he's not the Javon Kinlaw barrel through. He's not that play style. It's just not what he does.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But like, he's just a big body guy who can probably just stop the run. He's not going to penetrate and all that other stuff. But I mean, there's just a lot of good
penetrator. Redmond gets upfield.
Oh, absolutely. That's why I want him. It's nothing to do with the bias. I've seen some tape on.
He's a good player, man. He's a really good player.
Yeah, and then there's one sleeper in the draft at tight end that we should definitely take a flyer. I know you're probably gonna hate me for this.
No, go ahead, man.
Braden Willis. We got to get this kid.
You know, I like him. And I think that the 49ers definitely are going to have a lot of spots to go for tight end. They've got spots. I think that he blocks really, really well. That's the first thing I have on my draft write-up. Lead blocker, blocking in space, good. Athleticism with pass catchers, nice. Versatility, special teams. And if you look at the round, he's going to be a day 3 guy. He's got to be a 6th, 7th round type guy, undrafted free agent. If you're getting drafted in those slots, you got to have a path to the active roster. Braden Willis, that dude's going to be on all 4 special teams, minimum week 1. And so you have to make yourself valuable for why this team wants to keep you. 49ers roster is loaded. Trying to get on this 53-man squad last year, it's not like 2017 where you had undrafted free agents starting multiple positions on offense and defense. And we're not that team anymore. So somebody like a Braden Willis, man, it makes a lot of sense because he brings value in so many different spots. Love that pick. And I know it's an OU guy, but again, he's going to make a roster.
Yeah, he could because of what he does. I mean, I've seen a lot of his blocking and I've seen him got better as a receiving tight end. So it's like there's more to his game that people don't realize, and he's not even the most talked about tight end in this draft class. It's a very deep class.
It's the best tight end class that I would argue probably in well over a decade. If I could pick one position of strength and depth, the tight end position's bananas this year.
Oh, wait, let me get back to this question right here. My bad. Shout out to John J from 49ers Ultimate Report.
What's up, John?
There's a question from Randy. Could we realistically use or sign all our draft picks? That's a lot of rookies. Trade must be brewing at some point in the draft.
So the issue with the 49ers is as they have developed and signed these colossal contracts, Kittle, Warner, about to be Bosa, about to be IU, Debo, right? All these guys. What happens with your roster, it goes from like super solid depth to top heavy. So the 49ers are on the low end as far as total numbers players like signed under contract. You got to get to 90 after the draft, after free agency. You got to get to 90 players. And so the 49ers, these rookies can make the 90-man. There's no doubt about that. Can they make the 53-man? Last year, they did really, really good with their picks. You had, what's it called? Tariq Castro-Fields. He didn't make the roster. He was a 6th-round pick. You had Kalia Davis, who was redshirted the whole year. He had the NFI, whatever else. That's a big deal. So currently, the 49ers have exactly 49 players under contract. You got to get to 90. So they got to add 41 players. Now, a lot of those are going to be, undrafted free agent workout guys, whatever else. But you want a good solid 70 quality players to pull down to 53. So you're looking at a good 23, 24 players through free agency and the draft that you're going to pull in. You got 10 draft picks, could be 11, depending on how the comp picks go. We should find out in the next week. But that's 10. And then free agency. And again, remember, when you're talking about Niners free agency, they don't make the huge giant splash signings anymore. They can't for the reasons I just mentioned before. Paid all that money to Debo, Kittle, Trent Williams, all those guys, whatever else. So you're looking days 2, 3, 4, 5 in free agency. That's where the Niners are going to get their work done.
Yeah. Oh, here's a question for John J. He's asking you, since he saw your video on the Jimmy G comp pick. Question for John Chapman. I saw your video on Jimmy G's comp pick. Is Jimmy G getting a comp pick next year?
100%. My prediction is Jimmy Garoppolo will sign for the most average money per year of anybody that's in the comp pick conversation. We just saw Derek Carr get signed. He doesn't fit the comp pick formula because he's not on an expiring contract. He got released. So he doesn't fit into that. Daniel Jones stayed with the team, doesn't fit into that, right? Aaron Rodgers getting traded doesn't fit into that, or staying doesn't fit into that. So if you're looking at quarterbacks getting paid, Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be top level. He's going to get more than anybody else. So I fully expect that to be another third-round comp pick next year that the 49ers will get back.
Oh yeah, I'm confident it's going to happen because a team that signs him to a decent contract is definitely going to be a third-round comp because they look at him as a most important position in football. And if, like you said, the inspiring contract, the difference between what happened with the Raiders was they released him, so they don't get no comp out of that. No. So,
bad franchises stay bad for a reason, and
pretty much.
The Raiders are putting on a damn clinic right now on what not to do.
Yeah, one of the worst when it comes to handling players. But one more question before we get to the end of this. David Corona wanted to ask one more question. Do you think the 49ers are going to pick up anybody good in free agency? We'll see. I think the best chance of us signing anybody good, I think we're going to go sign a better kicker. I think we're going to sign somebody who's a little younger and still can produce. I
want Matt Gay, man.
Oh, dude, I'm just thinking the same thing. Just like I think we're all thinking the same. Wayne Brees is thinking the same. I'm thinking the same.
Too much sense.
I just think getting him would be a good addition because Robbie Gould's already at this point. He can't even kick off at this point. Like, you're going to pay him $5 million when you can sign a kicker like Matt Gay, who's been in the pro and has been consistent, and you probably won't have to pay him as much, you know?
Yeah, he's cheaper. I think they'll get similar numbers this year, but I like that. We'll see how they go. We'll see what it looks like.
But here's our hope for free agency. And if we can make this move, in free agency, if we can get C.J. Gardner-Johnson, bro, that is a W and a big L for the Eagles.
It would be. If you want hope on the C.J. Gardner-Johnson like front, they lost their DB coach that he credited with like getting him to that next level. So that's a maybe, but I still don't think they let him walk. I just don't see it.
Yeah, I don't know, but there's possible. There's a little hope, but but before we end this show, man, I guess he wants to give you a shout out to your Texas, even though he's an Ohio State fan and he doesn't like Texas either, but he just wants to suck it up because he doesn't like Oklahoma in general. But I don't blame him. You know, I get it. But for John Chapman, I seen you appear on KNBR radio. It was a great interview that you had. Man. Very good. But for everybody else that's not familiar with John Chapman, man, tell everybody where they can find you and where your social media platform is.
Yeah, wherever you watch or download your podcast, just type in 49ers Rush and we'll pull up wherever it is. We go live on YouTube about 5 times a week during the off season. Yeah, check us out, man. And on Twitter at JL_Chapman. Very, very easy. At JL_Chapman.
Oh, yeah, definitely appreciate it, man. Maybe down the road, maybe later in the month or something, if you have any free time, man, let me just hop on your show, man.
We'll figure it out, man. It's always a pleasure, CG. Love what you do. Love your energy. Love the hustle, man. Yeah, and I said this before the show, man. I think you're the best there is at getting people on your show. Not myself. Like, I'm a nobody, but like, dude, you bring such good content to the community and the hustle, man. I respect it so much.
I guess I'm the John Cena, the hustle, loyalty, respect. No, but I've said it from all the time when I had you on my show. You were the one influence, and you've always been the best one that I've always looked up to. You know, when it came to the content community, bro, there was one content creator that inspired me to do videos, and it was you. So it doesn't change the tune, and I still stand by you. Dude, and you do a great job,
man. Dude, thanks, CJ. That means a lot. And dude, just excited to see where this could go. Like, how lucky are we? We get to come together and hang out. It's virtually and just talk football. Like, this is incredible. And so I just want to say thanks, CJ. Appreciate your community. Yeah. Love all the questions and respect. Seems like you had a very knowledgeable chat session going on, which was freaking awesome.
Yeah.
Really cool, man.
Definitely is. And maybe down the road, if we catch up on Levi, man, let's link up.
Oh, first beer on me as always, man.
Ah, man, looking forward to it. But thank you guys for tuning in. Me and John Chapman is out. And as always, go Niners.